Hi everybody, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney. In today's video, I want to talk to you about something from the recent chapter that I thought was pretty funny, and I thought was pretty much a continuation of a pattern that I've seen, and as well as many other fans have also seen in the way that Oda depicts relationships, including marriage relationships, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily see these type of patterns, and frankly I understand why. It's usually something for like a lot of shippers to notice more so than like anyone else in the community, which is fine. Everyone has their own interests in the way they view One Piece and consume One Piece, but I think it's very important, especially if you are a shipper, especially if you are someone who likes seeing romance, likes seeing how couples act around each other, that this is a really common pattern depiction of like how Oda views these type of relationships, marriages. Because in the recent chapter we see that one of the kids' nightmares that we see is that their moms are really scary, and understandably some moms can be scary. Like, you never want to make your mom angry. Like, there's a joke that if you missed a call for your mom, you're in big trouble, because you never want to make your mom angry, because she can be scary at times. And growing up in a European household, I can really understand that, because my mom can be really scary when she got angry, right? And that really is a depiction in a lot of like different types of media, right? Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of sitcoms, right, you would see these type of like situations where like people are scared of the wife, the mom, the boss of the household, essentially, right? And Oda depicts this a lot, especially because in a lot of Asian media, a lot of Asian dramas, whether it's from Japan, India, Vietnam, China, Korea, and so on and so forth, the woman is essentially the boss of the household, no matter how much the man tries to be. That regardless of how much the man tries to like be the man of the household, the boss of the household, the woman essentially is the one in charge at the end of the day. That's just how a lot of these media from Asian countries, European countries, and even some like old 80s 90s sitcoms portray, because it's a gag, it's a bit that a lot of people think is funny, right? And it's not on the line of like actual like real world abuse, where Oda actually depicts how like really bad that kind of abuse can be, such as the Big Mom pirates, Big Mom and how she treats her kids, how the Vince books treated Sanji, and so forth. He showcases how bad that can be. But in terms of something like this, where like the men are scared of the wives, the kids are scared of their moms, that's a common depiction of like a lot of like many different households that exist in the world, right? And it never really is about like the abuse of it, but it's more of like just the comedy aspect of it. And a lot of people can relate to it, because that's just how they grew up. It's not because the parents hated them, it's not because the parents wanted to abuse them, it's because they cared enough that they wanted them to not be reckless, to not do anything stupid, to actually just not do anything that could put them in danger, so that and that's just a way that a lot of moms and wives tend to showcase how much they care. It is a trope, it is a bit, it is a gag that's portrayed in a lot of media. One Piece is no exception, and it seems like Oda is the type a person who believes that type of relationship is what makes a good relationship, right? Even in a lot of these 80s 90s sitcoms where where like the husband and wives keep pushing jabs at each other, right, making fun of each other and so on and so forth, when they're confronted, or like where they get insulted by someone else, they're there to protect each other, to showcase how much they actually do love each other. That yes, we could poke fun at each other, which a lot of families do anyway. If someone else outside of the family starts poking fun at at our significant other, we are ready to fight back. We're ready to fight for family. That's the type of relationships I think that Oda really enjoys, and it showcases a lot in a lot of the relationships that you see in that he depicts in One Piece, whether it be Oden Toki, whether it be Kinemon and Tsuyu, and And recently, just now, how the Elbaf warriors, these strong, mighty warriors are scared of their wives, because it really is mostly about them caring for one another. And, Oda depicts wives as this scary and like this boss of the household type because he views that as a way that they show care. Because how else are you going to handle someone who is reckless? Someone who is as reckless as a lot of the characters in One Piece. Understand, a lot of these type of tropes that Oda depicts is vastly over-exaggerated. That's why whenever people try to, compare them to the real world aspect, it's not the same. Because one side is over-exaggerated. One Piece is heavily over-exaggerated. It's a fantasy world. It's always supposed to be over-exaggerated. So I never really agreed that we should really depict things that happen in the One Piece world to the real world, because that kind of stuff did happen in the real world where it's an actual, like, a real problem, then we should take it seriously. But in the One Piece world, it's over-exaggerated, right? It's supposed to be a gag, a bit, an over-exaggeration of a trope. That's essentially what it is, right? And, while your feelings are still valid, and I fully understand why some people may not like this, I fully get that. I really do. I just personally do not see it that way, right? And you know what? If you see it the other way, I can't stop you, because that's how you feel, and everyone can feel a very certain way, right? But it really showcases a pattern of like how Oda views romantic relationships in a lot of the couples that he essentially tries to portray as like them actually being interested in one another, right? And it's a pattern because it happens constantly with many different ships that he has introduced in the series, like I mentioned before, Oden and Toki, Kinemon and Tsuyu. Hell, even Kuma and Ginny kind of showcased that, with Ginny, would like throw like stuff at Kuma whenever he says something, she considers reckless, or like, that he shouldn't be thinking, and and does this because she cares. She cares that Kuma shouldn't be doing all of this, that Kuma shouldn't, be taking everyone's pain, It's like, you get this feeling that like she cares so much that like what else she's supposed to do to reckless individuals who are over exaggerated, they're depicted as such. That's the only way to scold them, and this is why, like, whenever you see patterns like this, the way you see Oda essentially depict, couples, marriages, and, romance in this manner, it's very hard to see a situation where, like, you can view it similarly to how he depicts Luffy and Nami's relationship. Yes, I know. It was all going to lead down to something with Luffy and Nami. Surprise, surprise. Welcome to my channel. But, like, it is. It's very much a depiction of that same type of thing. The same way he views a healthy, romance, where despite how much recklessness, the main MC goes through, at the end of the day, there is someone there that grounds them in reality, that grounds them, right? Scolds them. A lot of people don't like how she sometimes, hits Luffy, or quote unquote abuses Luffy in a very over-exaggerated slapstick comedy type of way. But, and you are very much allowed to disagree with what I'm going to say, it's still considered a slapstick gag and comedy that should not be in any way compared to the real world problems, real world abuse that people do experience. Those are wrong. But Oda's depicting them in a slapstick comedy because of who the over-exaggerated characters are. In this case, Luffy's being reckless, so Nami has to scold him whenever he does something stupid, whenever he does something insane that actually could possibly hurt others, hurt them, put their lives on the line. She scolds him, she hits him in a slapstick comedy type of way, because that's how Oda has to ground these characters. They won't listen to words, right? They won't. So instead of like, characters not doing anything and just letting, someone like Luffy continue to be reckless and possibly kill them all, he makes Nami do something where she literally grounds him in reality, grounds him so that he doesn't do and understands and learns his lesson. That's really the only way he actually depicts it, is by doing it through slapstick comedy. Again, you are more than valid and welcome to like not agree with the way Oda handles this type of stuff. That's perfectly fine. That's your criticism. I'm never going to be against that, because a lot of people have, very harsh experiences in certain situations like this, happen to them, right? The only defense I have for you is that it's still a fictional story where with over exaggerated characters that we really shouldn't compare with real world type of actual problems, actual abuse that you may have experienced if you don't like it. And it shouldn't really relegate to you hating Nami as a character because of the fact that it's a fictional, over exaggerated story. Regardless, that's not the point of this video, right? The point is that Luffy and Nami, essentially, their relationship, their bond, legitimately depicts in a very similar fashion to how Oda views marriages, right? It's really that and not only marriages but other relationships. So that's why it's very funny to see in the most recent chapter where like a lot of these strong Elbaf warriors are afraid of their wives. Similar to how like when Luffy became a Yonko, guess who was the one who put fear in him? It wasn't like another Yonko, it was Nami. Because that's really the trope, that's really the gag that is being presented by Oda in how he views what a healthy relationship is like in his view, right? It's over exaggerated, yes, but that's how he views it. He views a husband and wife duo where the husband will always protect the family, right? Will protect them from anyone and wouldn't be scared of anyone except for, the woman of the household, the boss of the household, the person, their partner. That's who they are afraid of more so than anything. And it's not the type of scared, type of fear that's like, haunting or like really on the lines of like something that, would be very bad in the real world. It's exaggerated because his view is that if a wife doesn't scold you, if a wife doesn't like put you in your place when you do something reckless and stupid, they don't like, I'm not saying they don't care, right? But it definitely feels that way, right? And even Oda himself has stated several times that the only people who really scold him and really could scold him are his family, his wife, right? She has done that according to him. And that's why I think this is a very interesting way of him showcasing that, the bond between Luffy and Nami is very similar to how he views marriages and how he views romantic, relationships as being strong, right? Even in a relationship like Kitos and Scarlet, you still see Scarlet scolding Kitos and trying to make him stop being reckless. It's all a pattern that you see throughout many of the actual canon confirmed romantic relationships that do exist in One Piece, right? So it's not really strange to see Luffy Nami being a ship that could become canon, right? It can definitely be. It definitely fits a lot of the ways that Oda views a healthy relationship, right? And to me, that's like one of the biggest hints that Luffy Nami fans have. Even another instance inside the chapter that you could point to another pattern of like actual couples that like Oda really enjoys writing is how Gavin and Ripley talk about their son Colin getting kidnapped. Gavin literally is like cheering, like saying that like, oh, look at that, my son Colin got kidnapped. He's amazing, he's so strong and worthy that he got kidnapped. And Ripley's just like, now's not the time, you idiot, that kind of thing, which is like exactly the way Luffy or someone like Luffy in any other ship will respond. Like a prideful parent, a reckless parent, and then the person who is his partner who tries to, ground him. Like, it's really a continuous pattern that you see throughout the story. And that's why it will work well if he decides to make any ship canon. If he decides to do so. So that's why I want to talk about. That's why I found it interesting in, from the Elbaf chapter. And I thought that was a very interesting way that Oda has once again depicted what he views as a really a good relationship between a ship can be, or a husband and wife can be, because it very much aligns with what a lot of Luffy Nami shippers see in their ship. So that's what I want to talk about. Thank you so much for watching, and just remember, Oda has once said that heroines should always be viewed or should always be written based of like what the mangaka's type is, and he has gone on record to say that Nami is his heroine, and Nami really depicts the type of woman that he likes. So take that with what you will, but thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.